So Michael Knowles, more commonly known as Michael Knowles, uh, recently sat down with protesters and debated the issue of non-binary people, I guess. So this is going to be really, really exciting stuff, guys. Okay, I do not know how this is going to go. I have not seen it. I don't know if Michael Knowles is going to do great or do terrible. We're just going to have to see.
Demi,
Demi.
Ferris, first of all, thank you for coming to the lecture, and then thank you for your questions, and then for sitting down. I take it you did not agree with me coming in. Did I persuade either of you?
No.
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 Okay.
Not particularly, no.
The topic of the...
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. If you're already a non-binary person and you listen to Michael Knowles' speech and that's enough for you to be like, you know what, I've decided to turn away from my evil ways, then you were probably just broken from the start.
conversation was abortion.
Mm-hmm.
You asked about transgenderism.
I did.
I didn't persuade you on that.
No, not really.
When did you start to identify as a woman?
What makes you say that I identify as a woman? Because I actually didn't assert that.
I don't know.
Is it just pattern recognition?
Oh, we just got a real life non-meme did you just assume my pronouns moment. And Knowles is actually tripping up on it.
Is it just pattern recognition? Do I just look like one of the transes?
You're wearing a dress. It was
Yeah.
my first hint.
Yeah. Have you heard of a femboy? Do you know what that means?
Now I have, but I don't know what it means.
Okay. It's feminine men. They wear a lot of dresses. It's cool.
But
I'm not a femboy. I identify as a trans woman.
Okay, so I was right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You were correct.
But a femboy is different than a trans.
Yes, they are. They're quite different.
What's the difference?
So a femboy still retains their male identity and pursues femininity, whereas a trans woman actually identifies as a woman.
What does that mean, though? If you if I pursue Sicilian identity, then I would identify as Sicilian.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But then, if a femboy,
Yeah, but like, Michael, if you put on a dress, please never do that, by the way, but if you put on a dress, then would that make you a woman? No, of course not. So clearly, if there's a femboy, someone who is a boy, a man, who also enjoys feminine clothing, just putting on feminine clothing doesn't actually mean they're not a man anymore, right? It ultimately is all going to come down to the individual's self-perception, their self-identity.
pursues feminine identity, he would identify as female.
He would identify as feminine, not necessarily female. I think you and everyone at the Daily Wire would agree that feminine and female are not synonymous.
Well, men can be effeminate.
Yeah,
actually,
effeminate.
but that's different than feminine.
Feminine. How would you define feminine versus effeminate?
Feminine is good, and it's what women are when they act like women. And effeminate is bad, and it's what men are when they act like women.
So yeah, we could say a femboy is a...
What? What is this fucking trash definition? Femininity is good. It's when women act like women and it's good. That's your... What? Calm down, Aesop's fables over here. What the fuck?
A boy who's effeminate. Well, then a trans woman actually doesn't retain the male identity and chooses to identify as a female.
Okay, but then to loop back around to my first question, when did you start to identify as transgender?
Started to identify as transgender. Internally, I've noticed the sort of mismatch between my identity and the body that I was given and the roles that society has placed upon me. That mismatch was pretty clear from a very young age. I'm not going to pretend that I was a woman all along. You know, I was born with a female brain. But I'd say probably since around 4K, you know, like school.
4K?
Like 4-year-old kindergarten, like preschool.
Okay. What do you think caused it? If you say you weren't, you know, it's not like you were born in the wrong body or something, then what do you think caused it?
I think it's quite simple, really. I think some people like ketchup and some people don't. You know, I wanted to live my life this way. I wanted to pursue these characteristics, these traits.
No, I'm not denying that you want or
that I want to do that,
but I'm just kind of asking why.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same reason why anybody identifies as the gender they were assigned at birth. Well, it just feels kind of natural.
When did you publicly start doing it?
I'd say I came out as trans to everyone except for my family members, because it wasn't safe in my household.
Where it wasn't safe?
Why wasn't it safe?
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the grotesque.
Yeah, damn, Michael Knowles. Okay. He's like asking this person to just trauma dump. He's like, so why wasn't it safe? When did you notice you were trans? What do you think caused your transness? Like, jeez. I mean, I know it's Michael Knowles. Like, he doesn't really know anything, so he's trying to find some answers. I get it, but like, some of these questions, man.
Details, but I was in a pretty abusive household. My father was not very accepting, but my mother.
Do you think maybe that might have had anything to do with?
Oh no.
you know, all of
No,
this?
the abuse and whatnot didn't really. I don't see any correlelation with that in my gender identity. I could see the look on your face.
Because I've
I
just
see the
heard,
talking point.
I've
Yeah.
heard, it's not just, I mean, I've just heard it from people who have detransitioned or, you know, that sometimes that correlates.
Yeah, I don't like, you know, trust me, I'm not proud to say that I grew up in an abusive household and I also happen to be trans. I don't want to fuel that statistic, but I'm also not going to be dishonest about my upbringing.
Yeah. Now, you are not trans.
I am.
You're
They
just
are trans.
You're trans too?
Mhm.
No, you're not.
I am.
Oh shit.
Well, so what are you?
I'm non-binary.
Oh, all right. I don't mean to be, but you're not saying you're a man.
I'm not saying I'm a man now.
And you would have at some point in your life said you're a woman.
I don't think I ever said I was a woman.
A little girl. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
You did. Okay. But then when did you decide you're non-binary?
I didn't know what transgender or non-binary was until I was 14, 15.
Most people had not heard of it
Yeah.
until recently.
I mean, it existed, but I hadn't heard of it.
I suppose we'll perhaps agree to disagree on that.
You don't think it existed until
Wait.
recently?
Knowles doesn't think non-binary people existed?
No, I think people have been confused about their sex, and I think they've had all sorts of aberrant desires for all of history. But I don't think it's a real category, basically. So I don't mean it in any disrespectful way. I just don't think, I don't think it's.
I don't mean it in any disrespectful way. I just mean that it's not an authentic form of identity, and it most likely was caused from a bunch of abuse you endured as a child. But I'm not saying it is anything disrespectful, you know? Just that your identity, your perception of yourself is wrong.
To have a male body but be a female, because I don't think that's how body and soul or how identity actually works.
So I think what we're saying is that transgenderism, let's just say as an ideology, has existed for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The first books that were burned in the Holocaust were about transgender people, about sexual studies.
Well, yeah, there was all sorts of sort of sexual, and it goes back obviously much further than the 1940s. People had these desires.
Much-
But it is
yes.
I suppose the difference would be that transvestitism has existed for all of history. There've always been sort of, you know, cabarets and red light districts and things like that. But the ideology, meaning the view that a man could say he really is a woman, or a woman could say she really is multiple, you know, they or them, or not either a man or a woman, that's a relatively new ideology.
No.
Not the behavior,
actually.
but
We have, looking back, I mean, obviously historical records going back thousands of years get kind of shaky just because, you know, we aren't able to preserve text that long, and maybe text even didn't exist, but
they did
we
exist.
have-
We actually
not,
have,
not for all of human history.
There's historical analysis of non-binary people. 18th century example of gender nonconformity. A French spy, diplomat, and soldier. They lived the early part of their life as a man and in later years lived as a woman. Yeah, I mean, there are just various different examples of non-binary people and trans people throughout history.
Well, thousands of years, yeah, but not like.
oh, not going
course,
back to
yeah, we can-
Adam in the
yeah.
garden. That's probably true.
But there's evidence of people with assigned male skeletons in traditionally female clothing and attire in burial, and we have the same vice
Where?
versa. People, this is one of the specific.
Notice how he's asking for these hyper specifics that he never actually gives to other people. Really, really weird, right? Like, he never is very specific with his arguments, but now when someone else is arguing, suddenly he's like, can you please give me a specific example?
Examples I'm thinking of was Norse. There was
She
a
knows it.
female skeleton that was buried with traditionally male burial rites and clothing.
How did
So
this
Oh, she even knew the example. Damn.
How do they know the skeleton's female?
well, I said female because obviously I believe that gender is something social rather than just biological, but
But the scientists
Oh,
were.
he thinks he got a gotcha there. Listen to Knowles, dude. He's such a fucking retard. He actually thought that was a gotcha. Yeah, dude, there are biological differences. Male and female are different. Man and woman refer to gender, social categories. This is separate from biology. Although we socially correlate them with biology, they're not caused by biology. They're not intrinsic to biology. That's all that this is saying.
Were able to identify it by the skeleton.
We know that sex is unambiguous.
yeah,
I don't think we're denying that.
there's this odd idea among conservatives that transgender people don't understand that biological sex exists or that we're deluded.
Some don't. That we,
or that-
some don't. Some do. You obviously do, but some don't.
Yeah, some trans people have gender dysphoria, right? Because of the awareness that their gender identity is not aligning with the biology that society says they should be aligning with. Like, the gender dysphoria comes from the awareness that gender and sex are different, that their biology is different.
No.
I mean, I have yet to meet anybody.
I've yet to meet
I've
anyone
seen people
who's
clipped out of
genuinely-
context to look like that, but I haven't.
Those people are talking to me. I mean, these are people. I promise you, I've spoken to these people on camera in some cases.
Mhm.
But in any case, you don't feel that way.
I and have
So you're
never
you're
met someone
non
who felt that way.
you're
But
non-binary.
Uh-huh.
You said that you came to this realization at 14.
Mhm.
What do you think kind of pushed you over that edge at 14?
I think intense emotional distress at the prospect of needing to navigate through life being someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's girlfriend, someone's wife, someone's mother. That's just something that wasn't really a role that I wanted to fill, and a role that I felt intensely distressed at the prospect of needing to fulfill.
Why is that?
It's difficult to explain, and would be difficult to explain in a very short period of time. It's just one of those things that you feel deep down in your soul.
You mean it would be difficult to explain even to yourself, or you're just saying it would be difficult to articulate this thing that I
It's
understand?
difficult to articulate. It's kind of an abstract thing.
The cause of gender dysphoria and this discomfort with your sex assigned at birth in these roles is still pretty widely debated, even in the woke scientific community.
Right. And there would seem to be, even among the pro-trans kind of woke,
Yeah.
a presumed plurality, or multiplicity rather, of causes. Like some people can fall into this as a bit of a sexual fetish.
That isn't transgender, though. That's
Some guys who dress up like women will openly state that they're the Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, said they fell into their transgender identity largely through pornography, and others will say that as well. Now, you might say, well, it wasn't pornography; it was because of, I wanted to wear a dress
So,
when I was
like,
4 years old or something. But I'm just saying, in some cases, it would appear to be more of a sexual fetish. For some people, it might be caused by some emotional distress. For some people, it might be caused by any number of other factors. Again, I'm just repeating what I've heard from the left. I'm not even stating.
I mean, the
I don't think
material,
that the left says that.
the material.
the Wachowski
presence-
brothers certainly do. And they're
That's
That's
They're
the
trans.
left.
The,
the most famous
the material
transgender identifying
presence
people in
of
the world.
somebody wearing
That is
a dress with a male body.
wildly false.
The material presence of a man in a woman's dress perhaps could come about as a sexual fetish. I think we agree on that, but I don't think that. I think what we're trying to say is that that's a very different thing than we're describing.
No, I guess that's what I'm saying too. That there are these. So we all agree there are these different causes for this kind of identity.
This is such a weird assumption. Like, so because you can point to one example of some high profile person saying that they like discovered this through pornography or something, this now means that like trans people have a sexual fetish. What are you trying to establish here? Like, the majority of trans people who are trans are not trans as a result of a sexual fetish. So therefore, you bringing off these like one-off outlier examples of some trans people using it as a fetish, it doesn't really mean much. If this was the majority, fine. What's the significance of this? There's a fringe amount? Okay, great. Now let's look at the fringe amount of conservatives that are actually pedophiles. Then get back to me. Like, this is stupid. This is a bad argument.
To talk about transgenderism, you asked me about abortion.
Mhm.
So you support abortion,
Absolutely.
Oh no.
and do you support abortion? We didn't even talk about it, even though this is
Yeah.
the point. You do?
Yeah.
You won't need one though.
No, I won't need an abortion.
And you might not either because you're transgender or non-binary.
Do you believe that transgender people are all celibate?
I'm just a little confused as to what non-binary means.
Yeah, Michael Knowles is really confused, clearly. I think he thinks he's being like funny or quippy here by like playing dumb when he just sounds dumb. Like, that's it. There's not really much to it. He just is kind of dumb.
Non-binary means I am not a man or a woman, regardless of what parts I was bestowed.
Okay. What you're saying is your body has nothing to do with whether you're a man or a woman.
Correct.
I think
Yeah,
oftentimes the gender
man-
identity does describe a relationship.
Man or woman, male or female are biological terms. Man or woman would mean that you might not be a man just because you have male body parts. Your identity might be different.
To one's body. For example, if I were to say I am a transgender woman, I'm directly asserting that I am a woman and that I have, male genitalia.
Or you could have gone under
chromosomes.
the knife and lost your male genitalia.
I could have.
So you could be asserting that too. So I guess that's what I'm saying. It seems like you could just, all of these terms just mean kind of whatever you want them to mean.
No, not really.
No, it actually just means that your gender identity doesn't fit with the stereotypical or stereotypically expected behavior and identity that's usually associated with your biology. Not cause, but correlated.
To be a transgender woman, I have to be wearing a dress or look like this, but
I didn't say I have to. I said that's just how I like.
what's
to
the
express
concrete definition of a transgender woman?
it. Somebody who is assigned male at birth who identifies and pursues womanhood.
Okay. And what is womanhood? Not to sound like Walsh, but what is womanhood then? What does that
Womanhood?
mean in that statement?
I would describe womanhood as a very subjective
But you just
concept.
also said we're talking about things that are concrete, and that's all. I'm just trying to grab onto something. What is the actual definition of the thing that you are using to define transgenderism?
I would describe womanhood as a set of characteristics associated with females, usually
But that's
removed from
that's a
sex.
circular definition. And even the way you said it,
No, it's not.
I would describe, but I'm not asking you to describe anything. I'm asking if you can offer a definition, because it gets to the heart of your identity, which is, you're 4 years old, you say, I don't really feel like a man. How would you even know what that would mean at the
So
age
what
of
it sounds like he's trying to get at really is, again, there is an external social construct called gender. This exists as a result of humans who interact all having a general understanding of like, hey, you're a boy, so therefore you should act this way or look this way or try to present yourself this way. These are this is the external social construct of gender. It consists mainly of expectations. Those expectations are placed on people when they're born based on the genitalia that they have. Then, as they're growing up, they internalize this external social construct of gender. So now they've been told, you have this body part, that means you're a man, that means you act this way. You start to internalize that. I'm a man. This is how I should be acting. So when they talk about like pursuing womanhood, what they really are trying to say there is that their internal perception aligns more so with the external social construct of gender, particularly the side of that spectrum, the feminine side. That can mean the types of behaviors that are stereotypically associated with women, the types of clothing, maybe a type of talk, various different things that all kind of fall under this broad category. So the external social construct of gender isn't really that hard to understand. Like, it makes sense. We all are a result of our environment one way or another, and gender is heavily influential when we're growing up. I don't know. I feel like, Walsh or Knowles just doesn't really know what he's talking about, but still.
You even know what that would mean at the age of 4? And how would you know what that would mean now to feel like a woman?
Because there are a variety of traditions.
Again, like this idea that like kids are so dumb, they have no idea what's going on. It's not true. I have kids, and I can tell you that my daughter, I think I've told this story before, but I was showing her the videos of the moon landing. And she said, after she watched it, of course, she thought it was really cool. But then she asked me, she was like, well, can girls go on the moon? And I was like, first, of course, I told her, yeah, they can. And women were also heavily involved and influential in the moon landing and everything else. But I thought that was really, really surprising, because conservatives are always talking about kids as if they're so dumb and don't know anything. But like, in my experience with my own kids, they're super perceptive. They pick up on things I don't think they are going to pick up on. So the fact that like a kid around the age of 4 could have a general understanding of their gender is not really that shocking at all.
Associated with the male and female sex, and I've decided that I'd rather subscribe to the ones associated with the female sex.
But how would you even know what that is?
How would I even know what the traditions associated with the female sex are?
Yeah, again, how do you know? He's asking for what fills that question is the external social construct. That's how you know.
Yeah, I mean, they could be just a caricature.
I know that mom stays at home and that dad goes to work. I know that all.
But you would disagree with that.
No.
You said you reject those roles.
I understand what a traditional gender role is. I don't reject that it as a concept exists. I'm not comfortable with these social expectations. Therefore, I am going to adhere to different social expectations that are generally assigned to the opposite sex. Yeah, it is.
No, you're not.
I'm saying it right now.
Well, now you are, but that's not previously what you said. Previously, what you said was there are these different social expectations associated with being a woman, and I so wanted to avoid them that I no longer call myself a woman. Not that a woman can avoid those social expectations, but rather that the social expectations are so intrinsic to womanhood that I will no longer be a woman. I will be a non-binary they, them. That's what you said earlier.
No, it's that you don't feel comfortable fitting into a specific mold. So when you embrace a different gender identity and you want to be recognized as the gender identity that you have chosen for yourself, that you weren't forced into, but that you chose for yourself, that you feel comfortable with, you also want to be recognized as that gender. So yeah, if someone's biologically female and they don't want to be a woman, so they start presenting masculine, yeah, odds are it's because they want to be recognized as such by an external view.
You see the conflict, the contradiction there.
Yes, I understand where your confusion came from. So I don't want to adhere to the social norms generally pushed onto women. And I also feel intense discomfort when being called with feminine pronouns, when being called a woman, when being perceived as a woman.
Yeah.
And I understand those things aren't necessarily under my control, so, water off a duck's back. But I feel discomfort with that, therefore I choose to reject it.
Okay. Would you, just to tie it up, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about the issue that you wanted to talk about, would you ever get an abortion?
I could come up with a circumstance in which I would. I highly doubt that such a circumstance would arise.
Why wouldn't you?
Mostly just because those circumstances, I've never been pregnant. I do not foresee being pregnant in my future.
Okay, but why wouldn't you in principle, I guess?
In principle, I have no issues with it. Past certain points of development, I do believe you can start ascribing personhood to a fetus.
What would the point be then?
What would the point be?
Because you said, look, there's a point at which I would start to ascribe personhood, and then presumably you wouldn't have the abortion. So what is that point?
I'm not a doctor.
Pretty clear-cut answer. It's sentience, right? Around 28-week mark is our general understanding of when the fetus begins having sentience. Most abortions take place long before this.
And, this isn't something that I've considered very much because, again, I don't foresee myself being pregnant.
Sure. But you intuit. I mean, you're obviously concerned about the issue of abortion. You showed up to this lecture and had to ask me this long question about it. So you intuit that there is some point, at least, in gestation where the baby would be a person and then it would be kind of wrong to abort the baby. So
that's me personally.
Yeah, so I'm asking about your personal opinion.
That anyone should be forced to give up their bodily autonomy to save the life of another person, even if you're considering a fetus to be a baby, even if you're considering
even if it is a
baby
person
from the beginning.
So then why did you bring up the personhood thing? You just said, look, I would.
That's how I feel. But I don't believe that the way that I feel should necessarily decide what other people do with their bodies and their lives.
You don't.
Uh-oh. What is he gonna do?
Think that your conclusions are sound? You don't think that you perceive the truth?
I'm just not.
You don't think your logic is too good?
I think that believing that my perspective is universally correct, I think that that's hubris. I'm a human being.
But you came here to tell me that my views are wrong and your views are right.
I do believe that people have the right to self-determination very firmly.
But you would force me to live in a society that tolerates abortion.
I don't think that you're being personally affected by that. It's not affecting your right to self-determination. It's not affecting the way that you live your life.
Right. So you're forcing me to base my political judgments on your conception of self-determination. Don't you think that's a little coercive? Isn't that a little?
What? How does anybody have a conversation with him? It's like trying to have a conversation with a broken fucking AI.
Wait, I'm not even following. I'm not sure you're saying much at all. Could you repeat what you were saying? Try and be more specific.
Yes, you previously said that it's a demonstration of pride and hubris for you to take your own personal judgments and impose them and universalize them to everyone else. And then in the very next breath, you said that your views of bodily autonomy and self-determination ought to apply to everyone, and we all ought to abide by them. That's why you came here, to tell me that I'm wrong and you're right. That's a contradiction.
I also believe in democracy, and the majority of Americans side with me. They believe in the right to bodily. Yes.
I'm not so sure. I mean, after Roe v. Wade was overruled,
the majority of Americans support abortion, dude. What?
States imposed limitations on abortion or banned it outright. That's democracy for you, isn't it?
Are you under the impression that we live in an absolute democracy?
No, we live in a representative democracy.
Yeah, we do live in a representative democracy, and those representatives their actions do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the people that they represent.
So you support democracy in principle, just not ours.
I support democracy.
But not our democracy.
I support our democracy.
Well, we have a representative democracy, and you just said that the representatives.
You're putting a whole lot of words in my mouth.
I think I'm just repeating what you said. I'm trying to.
You're not.
You just said.
This, by the way, is what happens when people try to have conversations with Michael Knowles. This is why a long time ago I said he's like the bad faith factory. Okay, it goes in one ear, it gets convoluted and fucked up and spat out in the most bad faith way imaginable. It's literally the I really like waffles. So you hate pancakes? Like literally, he is the human embodiment of this.
Okay, well, in our democracy, half the states decided to severely limit or outright ban abortion. And you said, well, you're assuming that we're a direct democracy. I said, no, we're a representative democracy.
I didn't say that we were a direct. I was explaining to you that we do not live in a direct democracy.
That's what I'm saying, right. But then I said, right, we live in a representative democracy. And you said, well, that's not representative of the people. But then what that would mean is you support some kind of democracy in theory, but you don't support the actual one we have here, which outlaws abortion in half the states after Roe v. Wade is overruled.
I prefer democracy to actually genuinely represent the feelings and best interests of the people living in that democracy.
What if 50%
Every once in a while, I mean, do you believe the government, do you 100% agree with the government of the United States on everything all the time?
No, I sometimes.
And would that mean that you hate democracy in America?
No, I think sometimes most people disagree with me. but that doesn't mean that I would sacrifice my view and the rightness or wrongness of my view to the mob or something like 50% plus one. If 50% plus one of the electorate came out and said that abortion is murder and we're going to ban it in all circumstances, would you still support democracy?
Of course.
You would.
Democracy. What is that Winston Churchill quote?
That's the worst form of government other than all the other ones that have been
Yes.
tried. Yep. So you would support that.
Absolutely.
You just got to convince 50% plus one of the people, and you would be the biggest pro-lifer in the country. Ban abortion everywhere.
I mean, I wouldn't agree with it, but I would live with it.
You would live with that. That's good.
I don't believe in imposing my beliefs on others. If the majority believes that abortion is murder, then obviously I'd be forced to go along with that. I don't believe in political violence. What would I do? That would be horrifying. No.
Well, great. All right. So maybe I convinced you a little bit in my talk then.
No.
That's what it sounds like I did. But
I just saying
least,
that I'm not against political
Dude,
violence.
this guy
doesn't
is
mean
so
I'm-
you said you would
annoying.
support.
Well, it sounds like I convinced you a little bit. Okay. Is that what you tell yourself? Like, my dad loves me. Okay, and that's what I tell myself a little bit anyway. I kind of convinced him he did. I'm not even totally sure what he's getting at here. I guess he's saying because she's in support of democracy, she wouldn't really be because she's more in favor of her own positions, I guess. It's like, okay, I don't know.
I wouldn't try
and
and
support the outlawing of abortion if most people wanted it.
I don't think they're saying that they would totally comply with the social acceptability.
I think they're saying they appreciate the process of everybody having a say in the electorate.
Being pro-life. I think they would still try to convince people within the marketplace of ideas what they believe in.
Okay, so you wouldn't
So,
accept what the majority.
I think when they
people
say
want.
it,
you
I
just
think-
try to convince them otherwise.
yes.
I think they're trying to say they wouldn't override democracy with political violence. They're not
Yes.
saying that.
Oh, well, that's
within
good.
the
No one
market.
had suggested that.
Yeah.
That would have been terrible. Demi, thank you very much.
It's great to talk to you.
Ferris.
Okay, this was a pain in the ass. God, I hate listening to Knowles. If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today.